Alaska doesn't push anyone away. It simply watches and waits for you to give up. Because if this place has more space, more coastline, and more resources than almost any other American state, why do people leave? It's not the cold. It's not the isolation. There is something here that breaks most people before they even realize it. And when this land decides you don't belong, nothing keeps you here. When someone looks at the traditional map of the United States, Alaska seems like just a decorated rectangle tucked in the bottom corner. But when the state is shown at its real scale, it stretches across the entire country from coast to coast, from California to Georgia. Suddenly, that mental image changes. It is not a state, it is practically an independent continent. Life in Alaska Explained begins here. There is no lack of space. There is a lack of what to do with so much space. It is as if there were a silent agreement between maps and human comfort, hiding its real size so people do not get scared. Because the moment someone realizes that multiple countries could fit inside Alaska, an inevitable question appears. Why does a place this massive have fewer people living there than a mid-sized American city? Some studies mention the phenomenon of Alaska population decline, but the real size reveals something much deeper. The issue is not geographic, it is psychological. In Alaska, space does not mean possibility, it means loneliness. How do you build a life where everything feels too far away? And when the mind understands that too much space can also become a burden, a new question whispers in the background. What else does this map hide when it is shown at full scale? There is an area on the map called the Alaska Triangle, a region so massive that it stretches from Anchorage to Juneau and Fairbanks, forming an invisible triangle where more than 20,000 people have disappeared since 1970. And although many try to romanticize it with theories about mystical creatures or strange sightings, the core of the problem is simpler and much more terrifying. In the Alaska Triangle mystery, the fact is that there is no way to search for someone who disappears. Imagine a forest so dense that sunlight barely touches the ground, combined with mountains sharp as blades and weather that changes within minutes. A helicopter can take off under a clear sky and, 3 miles later, enter a fog so thick it feels like paint. When someone disappears there, it is not like losing a person, it is like losing a point on the map. There are no roads, no continuous trails, only silence. And when communication fails and GPS goes crazy, it feels like Alaska intentionally disconnects from the world. People do not vanish because of magic, they vanish because there is no access. And if disappearing is the rule inside this triangle, imagine trying to live beyond it, where some cities do not even have roads to enter or leave. Most people assume they can get in a car, follow the highway, and arrive wherever they want. But in Alaska, that logic disappears. Only 20% of the cities have road access. The rest live what many call the remote Alaska lifestyle. You depend on boats, planes, or luck. It is like living on a frozen archipelago, except without the blue ocean to compensate. The state capital, Juneau, is not accessible by land. There is no road connecting the capital to the rest of the state. If you want to leave, you must fly or travel by water. Imagine what this means for everyday life. Even a simple doctor appointment becomes a logistical operation. And when the weather changes, which happens quickly, nobody leaves. Alaska does not connect places. Alaska isolates people. Roads represent choices. In Alaska, there are almost no choices. And when the freedom to come and go disappears, a question emerges that most people are afraid to say out loud. Does living here mean being trapped? Because if getting in is already difficult, wait until you discover the cost of trying to maintain any infrastructure in a land that seems to fight back against humans. In normal places, you build a house on solid ground. In Alaska, the ground decides whether the house will still be there tomorrow. Permafrost, a layer of permanent frozen soil, behaves like an unstable floor. When temperatures rise just a few degrees, it melts and everything above begins to sink, Houses tilt, pipes break, runways ripple like modeling clay. It is like trying to build a city on top of gelatin. Life in Alaska explained, "Here, even the ground is an adversary." A local engineer described it like this: "You never build in Alaska. You negotiate with Alaska. Because every pole, every road, and every pipe has to be suspended, elevated, insulated. And even then, the ground always wins." When a structure begins to give way, the owner does not ask if it will collapse, they ask when. Many arrive full of dreams and end up facing reality. Why people leave Alaska has nothing to do with the cold. It has to do with the exhaustion of fighting a ground that never stops changing. Permafrost is a silent reminder that nature does not want permanence. And when you understand that even the ground can push you out, you begin to realize that the environment here is not just cold, it is active and unpredictable. But what happens when nature not only shifts the ground, but also turns off the light for months and begins to affect the human mind? There are places in the world where night lasts for hours. In Alaska, it can last 2 entire months. Imagine waking up, looking out the window, and seeing the same darkness as yesterday and the day before that. Your internal clock begins to fail. Without light, the body loses its sense of time. It feels like living inside a slow-motion film. Studies related to Alaska population decline show that many people do not leave because of a lack of opportunity. They leave because their mind cannot handle it. When summer finally arrives, the extreme repeats itself the opposite way, more than 20 hours of sunlight per day. You try to sleep, but your body insists it is still too early. Blackout curtains become survival gear. Sleep deprivation mixes with irritability, anxiety, and in more serious cases, seasonal depression. The human brain was designed for cycles. Alaska does not operate on cycles. In this brutal swing, months with too much sun, months with almost none, sanity begins to wear down. People arrive thinking they will live an adventure, and without realizing it, enter a battle with their own mind. And when the mind falters, the environment finds new ways to apply pressure, even making the ground shake beneath your feet. In Alaska, the ground is not a guarantee, it is a warning. The state contains more than 40 active volcanoes. Studies show that in the last 5 years alone, more than 150,000 tremors have been recorded. Some small, others strong enough to make instruments around the world detect continuous vibrations, as if the entire planet had turned into a giant bell. This is where the term Alaska earthquakes takes on a new meaning. The ground does not shake. It warns that it is alive. People who live here learn to identify the signs. First comes a strange silence. Then everything vibrates as if the ground were breathing. Objects move, doors slam, water trembles. There is no stability. Many residents describe the feeling as living in constant alert, as if anything could change without warning at any moment. When the body lives in that tension for too long, the mind pays the price. And if the ground no longer offers safety, the perception of control disappears. Human beings love to believe they dominate their environment, but in Alaska, nature does not negotiate land. And when you think nothing else can challenge human control, the food chain itself reminds you who is in charge. In many places, humans are at the top of the food chain. In Alaska, that illusion disappears quickly. There are regions where there is one bear for every 21 people. Imagine walking on a silent trail, knowing you are not exploring nature. You are entering someone's backyard. They are not visitors. We are. Some tourists treat encounters with grizzlies like a nature documentary. Residents treat them like survival logistics. Bears are not aggressive out of malice. They are the owners of the territory. Humans are just hopeful intruders carrying pepper spray and a confidence that makes no sense. Here, giant birds can steal your fish, moose can walk through your yard, and you are the one learning to move aside. For those who live the remote Alaska lifestyle, safety does not mean the absence of risk. It means absolute respect. And when every step could be the last, you understand that the true predator is not the bear, it is the environment. Because beyond dealing with wildlife, you face a cost of living that feels unreal. If even food needs to be flown in, imagine how much it costs just to exist. Living in Alaska is not expensive, it is negotiated. When everything depends on boats or planes, even basic needs turn into luxury. In small communities, a gallon of milk can cost $18. Someone looks at the price tag, takes a deep breath, and thinks, "This cannot be real." This is when the question echoes, why people leave Alaska. It is not lack of courage, it is lack of options. When every meal depends on air logistics, the grocery store becomes a symbol of survival. Imagine opening your refrigerator and feeling that everything inside it required effort. Not only money, effort. While in other places you compare prices, here you compare priorities. Do I need this, or can I wait for the next plane? Life in Alaska explained. The real cost is not in the product, it is in the isolation it represents. The high cost does not hurt your wallet, it hurts your mind. Because little by little, you realize that you are not paying for food. You are paying for access to the world. And if even the basics require sacrifice, what happens when the dream of prosperity hits something even more cruel? A promise of wealth that turned into a nightmare for thousands of people. That story begins with gold and ends with people running away. At the end of the 19th century, thousands of people dropped everything and headed north, driven by a single promise: gold. The famous gold rush Alaska seemed like the perfect chance to get rich quickly. 100,000 adventurers left full of confidence. Only 30,000 actually made it to the destination. Most turned back before even seeing a gold nugget. And those who stayed discovered that Alaska does not hand out wealth, it tests human limits. Stories from that era reveal something brutal. People carried 1,000 pounds of supplies on their backs, climbing frozen mountains again and again for weeks, just to transport what they needed to survive. Many did not die from the cold, they died from their expectations. Here, gold was not the prize, it was the bait. Nature watched in silence while each person discovered the same bitter truth. You do not conquer Alaska. Alaska decides whether you stay. The Alaska Triangle still reminds us of that today. Some people simply disappear within their own dreams. And this same pattern continues today. People arrive with plans, courage, and ambition. After months of facing impossible logistics, isolation, and the feeling that the land is always one step ahead, they finally understand what no one tells you in the beginning. Wealth in Alaska is not measured by money. It is measured by emotional endurance. But there is something even heavier when the dream ends. Escaping can cost more than staying. After everything, darkness, isolation, sinking infrastructure, bears that spot you long before you spot them. The conclusion becomes unavoidable. In Alaska, it does not matter who you are, what you have done, or how much you earn. Here, nature has the final word. While in other places, humanity shapes the land. Here, the land shapes the human. There is no such thing as dominating the environment. There is only learning to obey. Many arrive believing they will find freedom. But real freedom comes with a price, accepting that you control nothing. Not the weather, not the ground, not even your own routine. At some point, everyone faces the same dilemma. Continue fighting a place that refuses to be tamed, or accept that there is a force here bigger than any human ambition. A force that is not impressed by dreams or determination. And when that truth finally settles in, the question hits like ice to the chest. Would you have the courage to live in a place that might not want you there? Because to truly understand Alaska, you still need to see the side tourists never see. The side that never makes it to Instagram. Photos sell a paradise, northern lights, cozy cabins, cinematic silence. But tourists stay for days. Residents stay for entire winters. That is when the invisible side appears. The psychological weight of isolation. Studies show elevated rates of seasonal depression and burnout in small communities. While visitors stare at the green sky in awe, residents deal with the emotional impact of months without seeing people. This is not exaggeration. It is routine. In some villages, the entire social world fits around one single table at the local bar. The same faces, the same conversations, the same conflicts. The mind begs for novelty, but it never comes. Slowly, isolation stops being geographical and becomes emotional. Here, silence is not peace, it is pressure. The remote Alaska lifestyle impresses at first and wears people down over time. When loneliness stops being a choice and becomes a condition, something inside starts to crack. And then comes the thought no one says out loud, I need to leave. But trying to leave opens another door, a door almost nobody shows, because entering Alaska is easy. Leaving is a completely different story. Many people arrive believing they will restart their lives, but after months of isolation, extreme climate, and everything being expensive, reality hits. Leaving may cost more than staying. Airfare is unpredictable. Sometimes a simple flight out of the state costs as much as a full interstate move in the United States. And when the mind is already exhausted, hearing the price of escape hurts more than the cold. This is where the expression "why people leave Alaska" gains a new meaning. Many who want to leave simply cannot. In many villages, there is only one small airport. If the weather closes in, the flight is canceled. If ice covers the runway, there is no takeoff. If fog swallows the sky, nobody leaves. One resident described it like this: "Here, the weather owns your destiny. There is no plan B, there is no guarantee of tomorrow." When someone decides to leave, the ticket does not buy a seat, it buys the feeling of escape. And when demand spikes, prices skyrocket, contributing to the Alaska population decline. The cruelest part is silent. Some people arrive full of hope and leave emotionally broken. Others end up stuck between wanting to leave and not being able to afford it. Entering Alaska is a choice. Leaving Alaska always feels like a negotiation. And now that you have seen every side, the most uncomfortable question remains. What if you do not choose Alaska? What if Alaska chooses you? The biggest lesson is simple. Alaska is not a place you conquer. It is a place that tests whether you truly want to stay. Some places bend to human will. Here, humans are the ones who must bend to the land. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep discovering places that shape people, not the other way around.